Welcome back to the Vegan Cordon Bleu. Today we're veganizing Galette Des Rois. It's one of my favorite traditions to share with Canadian friends, and it is a cake that originated with Epiphany, so when the wise men got to Jesus on January 6th, but it is much more than this. In France, it's a tradition that we celebrate for about a month after Christmas. You eat la Galette des Rois with your friends, with your family, with your co-workers, at school, with your sports team. Any occasion is a great occasion to share this cake with a group of people. And there's a reason why this cake is best eaten with friends or family or colleagues or anyone. It is because it is a cake where someone wins a prize at the end. In the cake, there's a charm, or historically a dried bean, la fève, and whoever gets the slice with the charm or the dried bean is crowned king or queen. We're talking about a French tradition, so of course there are several different types of cakes depending on which region you're from. But today we're going to be focusing on the most classic one, the one that is most widely eaten across France, regardless of the region, and that is the one that is made with puff pastry and frangipane. This recipe is not hard, but it will take a bit of time because we will be making our puff pastry from scratch. If you're in a rush and you don't have time or don't want to do it, you could always resort to using store-bought puff pastry. We'll also be making Crème Patissière to make our Frangipane, so that's going to be one step as well. So it may seem like a lot of steps, but none of them are hard, and you can break it down and spread them over 2 days. That's actually what I'm going to be doing. You could make the whole cake in a day and eat it for goûter later in the afternoon. I'm having people over to eat it for goûter tomorrow, but I know I have plans during the day, so I'm going to get the puff pastry done today, and I'm going to get the crème pâtissière done today as well, and so tomorrow will be mostly about assembling and baking. We'll put the full ingredient list in the description below, and I'm going to be showing you things step by step, so we're going to be focusing on the ingredients that go into the puff pastry first. You'll need some flour, some butter, some water, some salt, and some small amount of melted butter. When you pick your butter to make puff pastry, make sure that you pick the type of vegan butter that is hard, like real butter would be, rather than the very soft and melty kind, because this is going to matter to your flaky layers in the end. The first step to making our puff pastry is going to be making des trompes. This involves making a dough with the flour, water, salt, and the small amount of melted butter. You can knead it by hand or you can knead it in a stand-in mixer. I'm at my mother's house and I am told that this can act instead of a stand-in mixer, so we're going to be trying this for the first time, and we're just going to be putting our ingredients in it except the big chunk of butter. Flour first, salt, water, and the small amount of melted butter that has hardened a little bit. All right, you can see our dough. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna incise it and make a cross.
And why is this important?
Because this is where we're going to be putting our butter later. Okay, now we're going to wrap this in saran wrap and let it rest in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. While we let our dough rest in the fridge, we're going to be taking care of our butter that is later going to go into the dough. So I've let the butter out for a bit so it's easier to work with. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to make it a nice square that we're going to fit into our dough. To make it easier, we're going to try to flatten it a little bit. And this is where I think it's easier to cut it in half. You put it in your parchment paper or something, and you go at it with a rolling pin. Time to let that anger out. We have about a square or rectangle, I guess, and we're going to be putting it back in the fridge now. Now we're going to be switching to making our crème pâtissière while our dough is resting in the fridge. For that part, you'll need some cornstarch, some milk. I'm using toasted almond milk to complement the flavor of la frangipane. This is some sugar, this is some butter, this is some vanilla flavor. I'm going to be mixing all of the ingredients, but for the butter into this and then transferring it into a pan. Mostly doing it because I see my cornstarch is kind of sticking to the sides. If you're smarter, you can put it in the pan directly. This is powder, but you could be using extract as well. Stir, stir, stir. You want to stir it until it's no longer clumpy, and then we'll put it in the pan to heat up. Now we put our mixture on medium to medium-low heat, and we keep stirring as it's warming up. It's going to start thickening within about 5 minutes, and then we'll take it off the stove and add the butter. My sister chiming in. Apparently you should be doing an H shape. Starting to thicken. And now we're taking it off the stove and adding the butter we saved. Your crème pâtissière is now ready. We're going to take it out of the pan and put it in a container to cool and leave it in the fridge overnight so we can use it tomorrow, or if you're making it all today, later today. The smart thing to do would be to add some saran wrap right on top of the crème pâtissière so it doesn't create a skin. But quite frankly, we're gonna mix it tomorrow, so I won't. Our dough has now rested 30 minutes in the fridge, and we're gonna start making our puff pastry. So, flour your work surface. The first step here is we're going to try to roll it out in a cross. So this is what your 4 branches are for. We're going to try to keep it as even as possible, and eventually we want to keep the middle part a bit thicker than the branches. See how this is a little bit thicker? Okay, now we're gonna try adding our butter in the middle, and the goal is gonna be to fold it over our sheet of butter. It's still a bit big, so I'm gonna try to roll it out a bit more thinly. Oops. So now we're gonna fold this part, then this part, and then the sides. At this point, you want to make sure that the corners are well sealed. Let's make sure that our work surface is still well floured. And we're gonna do our first tool. I don't know how you say this in English. So we're gonna stretch the dough in a long and thinner rectangle. Rotate. Well, you always want to rotate the same way. Thin out these sides that are thicker than the middle part. And now we're going to fold, and starting on our right side, do a third, remove the extra flour. Fold your other third on top. Again, remove the extra flour. This is the first tool, and now we're gonna let it rest in the fridge again. Our dough has rested in the fridge for 30 minutes, and now we're gonna do our second turn. So we're gonna do the exact same thing, and we're gonna do it 6 times. So we're gonna stretch the dough here. Rotate a quarter clockwise. Thin out the edges. And you fold in thirds again, making sure to brush off the extra flour. That's your second turn. We're gonna put it back in the fridge for another 30 minutes. Time for the third one. Same process. I'll stop talking from now on. You flour your work surface, you stretch, you rotate 1/4 turn clockwise, and you fold in thirds. And you make sure to remove all of the extra flour. Third one done. In the fridge it goes. Fourth turn is done. This is the fifth tool. And now your puff pastry is ready to use. You should leave it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes before you use it. You can keep it for a couple of days before you use it as well. We're now done working it. Our dough has rested in the fridge overnight, and now we're getting ready to bake our cake, which means that we got to take care of la frangipane. So that's the filling. What we're gonna need to make it, we're gonna need butter that it has been softened a little bit, so it's easy to mix. The crème patissière we made yesterday, some almond flour, some water, some cornstarch, some sugar, some more vanilla. I'm gonna grate the zest of a clementine, but you could also use an orange or a lemon, or really nothing at all. First, we're gonna cream our butter and our sugar together. You could use a stand-in mixer for that part, for the whole part as well. But I wanted to show you, so I've decided not to use my mom's weird machine. Now that you've creamed your sugar and your butter, you can add all of the other ingredients. And this is our crème pâtissière from yesterday. The vanilla. Now that our filling is done, we're going to actually roll out the puff pastry. So I've taken it out of the fridge. I'm going to divide it in two halves. I'm going to roll out the first half and cut a circle, add the filling, and roll out the second half. we're gonna make the second circle. You want to make the second circle a slightly wider than the first one, so that it can drape over the filling and also close on the same line. So now we're going to be putting the filling on our smaller circle. I'm using a spoon. If you have a piping bag, you're welcome to do that. Make sure that you leave at least 2 centimeters, so like maybe 1.5 inches to the side, so that you have a place where you can eventually seal your galette. Now it's time to put your little charm in the dough somewhere. If you don't have a charm, you can use a dried chickpea, a dried bean. That's what they used to use anyway. Try to put your charm closer to the edge, because that lessens the chance of you cutting into it when you try to make slices. And I'm gonna Okay, now we're going to be using our brush to just put some water along the edges, and then we're going to add our bigger circle on top. Press on the edges, but try not to crush all of your layers.
Tu vas redécouper un peu ou pas? Ouais, je pense.
My second circle is a bit too big, so I'm going to cut it here. Better too big than too small. We're brushing some almond milk on top. And then we're going to put it in the fridge for 30 minutes before we bake it. And actually put a second layer of milk, this time with maple syrup. It's been in the oven for about 40 minutes. It is now out. Probably should have brushed it more evenly. And now to serve, we add a crown and we wait for our friends.
How was the galette?
It was amazing. Honestly, one of the best ones I've ever eaten.